the Rotary Club of Pleasanton, the
The
world's
greatest
club.
As you all know by now, we're uploading our videos, our meetings to YouTube. And so you can feel free to share them with your family and friends afterward. Time for the pledge. Matt DePrentice.
I think it was supposed to be Victoria, and she asked me to say the pledge for everyone because she couldn't be here. Is that okay?
That's fine. I actually think for some reason I got last week's list and I updated. I
Matt did it last week.
Yeah. I updated it and somehow it didn't save. So I apologize. Yes. So our pledge.
I'd like you to take all of your mute buttons off, unmute yourself because I want to be proud and say the Pledge of Allegiance with this group in a fine manner. So please place your hand to your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the
Flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It's time for We Care. Now, who do we have for We Care? I had it in the email. It was correct in the email.
have Lisa Freitas.
Thank you.
Hi.
Lisa. Okay. Would someone like to say something for We Care? Kurt, is Lisa here?
Haven't gone through all the photos yet. Give me a chance.
I don't see her.
Okay.
Well, Bob Tucknut's here. Let's have him do it. Hey, Bob, you want to do We Care?
Oh, would you like to do We Care?
I don't know. If we're talking to me, I had to unmute myself. What was the question?
Would you like to do We Care?
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Bob.
We didn't hear you, Ginger.
Does anybody have a We Care?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Step up.
Hi.
Raise your hand if you have a We Care or just start talking. Nancy.
I didn't come to the Zoom meeting last week because I was down at Fremont getting 2 blood transfusions. And I'll be getting more of them. I'm now on weekly blood tests. The bone marrow biopsy came back with 2 problems with my bone marrow. And I'm now also on an oral chemotherapy drug. And just to give you a little shock, I take the drug for 3 weeks and then off for a week. And for 21 pills, the cost is $20,000.
Wow.
So I have Medicare and Blue Cross, but my copay is $2,900 a month. So
Nancy.
The chemotherapy is kind of kicking my butt. So just keep praying and sending good thoughts.
Hang in there, Nancy.
In there. Wish you the
We're
best.
all praying for you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kathy.
Yes, I wanted to mention that one of the reasons Victoria is not here right today is because her son was diagnosed with a life-affecting disease, and she's really the whole family is a little disarray at this point in time because he's going to have.
We lost you.
Please keep her and her family in your heart and in your mind. Her son Aaron will have a procedure next week.
Okay.
How old is he?
10.
Wow.
Jude. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Are there any other We Cares? Okay, back to you, Ginger.
Okay, thank you. Time for a song with Don Lewis.
Oh, yes. Okay, did everybody get their song sheet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I thought it'd be appropriate. This is a beautiful time right now, enjoying some great weather and a breath of relief for me.
Me too.
Oh, I like that, Ricky. Here we go, guys. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of gray. Everybody mute yourself. Over mountain majesty, above the fruited plains. America, America, God sent his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes prove in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy goal define, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine.
Thank you, Don. That was very inspiring and beautiful. Time for our inspiration moment with Eric Martin.
Hello, Ginger.
Hello.
So I have two thoughts to share today. So the first was, and I don't know, the poet, the young woman who read the poem at the inaugural ceremony.
Gorman. Gorman.
Yeah. Amanda Gorman. So I just thought there were in the paper today, they pulled some portions out of it. I just thought I would share a little bit of that. And then I have one other, my daughter was listening to a podcast recently, and there's a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, and Brene Brown was doing a podcast with him on the topic of infinite mindset. So as a leader, having an infinite mindset. And so the quote from him that I'd like to share today is, the great leaders are not the strongest. They are the ones who are honest about their weaknesses. The great leaders are not the smartest. They are the ones who admit how much they don't know. The great leaders can't do everything. They are the ones who look to others to help them. Great leaders don't see themselves as great, they see themselves as human. So that was a quote from him. And if anybody's interested, he did a podcast with Brene Brown. I was listening to some of it last night, and I'd highly encourage it. I think it's great. And then I'd just like to finish up with a little bit of Amanda Gorman's poem from yesterday. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but this doesn't mean we're striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose. We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce. And then I'll just finish up with, I think, the last part of what she said. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. I think she did a fantastic job. And anybody that hasn't watched it already,
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you. I just posted in the chat a link to her presentation with this beautiful kind of a piano overlay. And just I encourage you to take a look at it and share it with others.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Eric. That was great. Very inspiring. Appreciate it.
It's also printed in the Wall Street Journal this morning.
What was that?
Her remarks are also printed in the Wall Street Journal today.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Now for our visiting Rotarians and guests of Rotarians, who do we have here visiting?
President Ginger?
Yes.
Yes. I have Joyce as my guest today.
Hello, Joyce. Welcome.
Joyce.
Hi, Joyce. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you.
Glad to have you.
Should I jump?
I'm from India.
Say hello from India.
We have a visitor from India?
Rotary Club of Bombay West.
Oh, very good.
Oh.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Mumbai.
Welcome.
Welcome.
What time is it there?
I
What
got
time
your
is it there?
invite, so I joined you.
Yeah, what
Thank
time
you.
is it?
Brings you greeting from Rotary Club of Bombay West.
Bombay West. Nice. Welcome.
So
Welcome.
what time is it there?
Thank you.
The question was, what time is it there?
What time in India?
What time is in India?
Yeah.
Yes.
Midnight.
Yeah.
Midnight. Okay.
Nice. Very nice.
Thank you for joining us.
Any other
Thank you.
guests? Visitors?
Thank you.
Well, we have the infamous Bob Tucknott from the Dublin Club.
Whoa, fellow Rotarians.
Hello, Bob.
Hello, Bob.
Hey,
Hi,
Bob.
Bob.
Good to have you, Bob.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Don't see
Okay.
anybody else.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. Ricky, it's time for our Rotary International video.
Pues hay doctores, pero muchas de las veces, digo, por ejemplo, si tiene uno el seguro popular, que es el que nos dan a nosotros los pobres, pide uno una consulta, se la dan dentro de un mes, la cita. Pues la enfermedad no espera. Que yo, por ejemplo, vamos a decir, yo ahorita, digo, por mi edad ya no me dan trabajo, más por esos 2 infartos que tuve, pues se me quita el corazón. Y hay otras gentes todavía más necesitadas que a lo mejor están amputadas de un pie o qué sé yo.
Y el implante, lo que va dentro del oído es esto.
Identificamos que existen muchas necesidades médicas y eso fue el motivo por el cual acercamos o ayudamos a que venga las brigadas médicas de Cáritas para poder ayudar al sano desarrollo de la comunidad en el área de Zaragoza.
Estamos a 6 horas de Monterrey. Contamos con 6 consultorios móviles y atendemos de 100 a 120 personas diariamente. La principal característica de estas personas son personas pobres, vulnerables, con problemas de salud.
Can anybody translate?
Rotary nos enseña a dar de sí antes de pensar en sí, nos ayuda a entender las necesidades de la comunidad y cómo nosotros podemos unir fuerzas o estructurar proyectos, las necesidades de la comunidad sean solucionadas.
Ya demasiado, ya letras chicas ya. Entonces yo lo que toca a mi parte recibo bastante gusto, que no nos abandonen. Ojalá y que siempre hubiera estos servicios, porque muchas de las veces habemos muchas gentes humildes, pobres, que carecemos de gastos o económicos para movernos a donde nos den el servicio.
No trae alterada la vista, todo salió muy bien.
Y qué bueno que haya gente todavía humanitaria que se preocupe por los demás. Me gusta bastante.
Where's Bob Graham when we need him? I mean, Bob Athenauer.
Thank you, Ricky. Now, a number of us have been to Mexico on different wheelchair distributions and Tulancingo, our sister city, and other excursions. And so right now, with shelter in place, I just think it's really important for us to remember the scope and the breadth of Rotary and how we're all over contributing to a better world everywhere in the world. And looking forward to brighter days where we'll be able to travel again and see our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world. So thank you for that. I know it was a different language, but a number of us speak Spanglish and can at least remember our happier times and help, and knowing that there are going to be good times in the future where we'll be back in Mexico visiting our brothers and sisters in Rotary. So thank you for that, Ricky.
Yeah, our president-elect texted me, gracias, cerveza, por favor.
And that's, I mean, a number of us have been to Mexico. We know how loving and how open and friendly the Mexican Rotarians are and how much of a blessing it's been there to be with them. And look forward to being with them again, through other wheelchair distributions and other excursions and adventures. So it's time for our program with Steve McCoy-Thompson.
Great.
Steve, you're up.
Yes, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, I'm very happy to introduce to all of you Brandon Caldwell, who is, I hope he's on. Are you here? Are you with? There you are. Excellent. He's the head of iGate, which is a hub in Pleasanton that promotes, it supports entrepreneurs and helps those entrepreneurs scale their operations. It's a really dynamic group, and we're thrilled to hear about the program. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you in this way that we've all become accustomed to being with each other. I think we're all ready to get back to normal, but it's nice to connect with everybody. So I'm going to try to share at my screen in a slightly different way. So bear with me for just a minute. So. I practiced it before, but of course that never matters, right? Here we go. Let's try this again. I'm sharing from a program called Canva that I use to build presentations. I'm trying to present straight from it. So it'll be a little easier once I actually get it going. Okay. All right. Can you all see my presentation now?
If it says Daybreak Labs, we're seeing it.
All right, it should say iGate powering the Tri-Valley startup community. Is that what you see on your screen?
Affirmative.
Great. Okay, so iGate is it's a nonprofit organization. We're about 10 years old, and we were originally founded as part of the state iHub Innovation Hub network. That's a bit of a long story on how that iHub network evolved, but suffice it to say that we now depend on support from the Tri-Valley cities, including Livermore, Dublin, Pleasanton, the town of Danville, and the 2 national labs in Livermore are our primary financial supporters, as well as programmatic supporters for what we do. So I do a lot of work with Pamela Ott, who I'm sure most of you know, as well as Nelson Fiallo, and I've had Jerry Thorne and Vice Mayor Kathy Narum sitting on our board intermittently over the last couple of years. So our work, we're focused on building a thriving startup community in the Tri-Valley. And recently, that's meant an emphasis on life sciences and hard tech startups, which I'll get into in a bit. And our work in practice primarily is focused on lowering barriers to entry for entrepreneurs by connecting them with resources. In practice, that means our work through Daybreak Labs, which is our startup incubator, Tri-Valley Bio, which is a networking and event initiative focused on the life sciences, and Tri-Valley Connect, which is a branding platform for the region that we operate in partnership with Innovation Tri-Valley, for those of you who are familiar with both organizations. So Daybreak Labs is a startup incubator. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with generally the concept of incubators, where you work to these companies get organized and build connections to resources. And in our case, that includes unique facility offerings like life sciences and hard tech research and development labs, which are really hard to come by. And in the Tri-Valley, there really is nothing at all besides us. We're currently located in downtown Livermore. We support very early stage life science and hard tech startups. And hard tech, for your reference, means startups that are developing commercial applications based on scientific and engineering breakthroughs. So not software, essentially. Things like novel materials, renewable energy, aerospace, other kinds of hardware that are built upon these kind of lab-oriented scientific breakthroughs. Previously, we operated a co-working space as well, which was general purpose office space for people doing a variety of things, some software, some just services, remote workers, service providers, freelancers, folks like that. We've known for the last couple of years we were going to move away from that, largely in response to new entrants into the market like VentureX in Pleasanton and WeWork in San Ramon, filling that niche very well. And as a government-funded nonprofit organization, we don't view it as appropriate for us to compete with private sector enterprises. We want to fill gaps where we see that the startup community is not having its needs met and where the private sector is not currently operating. So the life sciences and hard tech space, we've known for a couple of years we were going to be moving more firmly into that. COVID accelerated our move away from general purpose office space and into specialty facilities, mostly because non-essential office uses were all shut down. So there was no need for us to continue to try to find a way to provide that service. So we've now moved out of our ground floor space in downtown Livermore, where we're operating our general office space, and we're consolidated into a lower level area in our current facility, looking to transition now out into a new facility. So I'm actually going to tour 2 new spaces tomorrow, and we're hoping in the next couple of months to execute a move into more of an industrial oriented facility that's better suited to our life sciences and hard tech clientele. Tri-Valley Bio is the culmination of work we began to try to understand whether there was a meaningful life sciences community growing here in the Tri-Valley. I had made some contacts with a couple of folks who'd been working in Tri-Valley Life Sciences companies over the years and really seemed to be connected to this growing population of highly skilled people and companies that were having a lot of success. And we hadn't spent much time focused on that sector. So we launched the Next Tech Speaker Series in 2017, and the response was pretty overwhelming. Next Tech has featured speakers like Serge Saxonoff, the CEO of 10x Genomics in Pleasanton, which recently went public and is expanding like crazy. Tim Harkness from Unchained Labs, also in Pleasanton, and even speakers from outside the region like Hemi Parthasarthi from Breakout Labs and Rachel Horwitz, who's the founder of Caribou Biosciences, which is a CRISPR gene editing company that spun out of Jennifer Doudna's lab in Berkeley. And the whole point of this series was really to bring experienced founders and other domain experts in the life sciences to come and share stories and information and build connections on how to build successful life science companies here in the Tri-Valley. And also for us, it was helpful to have a nucleation point for bringing this talent pool together in the region. So we execute that event series in partnership with a group called the East Bay Bio Network, which was co-founded by a Livermore resident and a collaborator of mine, which was all about building a life science professional network in the East Bay. So we had great success with those events. And in 2018, we held the first Tri-Valley Life Sciences Summit at Viva Systems over in Pleasanton, which was really designed to help share the successes of the regional bioeconomy here in the Tri-Valley and create the largest annual networking event for life sciences professionals here in the region. The first one was in 2018, as I mentioned. In 2019, we held it again and had over 350 attendees for that, which was by far the largest event we've ever put on. And in 2020, COVID kind of knocked us on our butt. We weren't able to pull off an event. We didn't want to do it virtually on that type of short notice. So we're planning to come back this fall, hopefully in person, but if we need to, we'll do it virtually because we think this is a really important part of the local economy to highlight. It's a very fast growing part of the local economy. So if you go to trivalleybio.org, you can see everything that we've been working on in terms of the branding and the events and the network connections there. Tri-Valley Connect is a general branding initiative and platform that we built in partnership with Innovation Tri-Valley that's really focused on companies, talent, and capital, and helping to elevate the profile of the Tri-Valley as the fastest growing subregion in the Bay Area. The Tri-Valley has a $42 billion regional economy, and it gets overshadowed in large part due to its position within the rest of the Bay Area. But if you picked up the Tri-Valley and moved us to any other place in the country, we would be an economic powerhouse on par with the Research Triangle Park in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. So we wanted to try to elevate that, so deliver some data-driven anecdotes about what the Tri-Valley is. It's not a bedroom community. It does have fantastic quality of life, but there's also a thriving economy independent from the rest of the Bay Area. And so we wanted the place to have each of our cities here in the Tri-Valley be able to tell their story about what makes them a great place to live and work and play, as well as have local high-skilled folks who have been commuting out be able to connect to opportunities here within the region. So there's a jobs board that's technology-oriented on the Tri-Valley Connect website that is focused on helping local talent connect to local opportunities. So we do that in partnership with Innovation Tri-Valley, and it's I think a great effort jointly to try and help tell the rest of the Bay Area and the rest of the world about what's going on out here in the Tri-Valley. I think for those of you who are watching what residential real estate is doing and the lack of inventory and how quickly things are moving, I think that word's getting out pretty effectively these days, especially as COVID has pushed people out of urban areas and wanting a little more space. So I think that message is getting out pretty successfully at this point. So that's the high level overview of what we do. We couldn't do any of the work that we do without the support of our partner cities and partner labs. But I wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A instead of me talking at all of you. So that's the high level piece. I'm happy to go into more depth on anything that you might want to discuss. So please, any questions?
Thank you, Brandon. That was great. I think what you're doing is really outstanding. I think one thing I think our people might be curious about is just sort of the flow of funds. How does it work? And do you ever considered I know some incubators will actually take a small equity stake
Yeah.
in those that they support. So
Yeah, sure. So going back to how we got started, the California Innovation Hub program was originally thought that it was going to come with financial resources from the state. And that was back in 2010 when the state had even less money than it does today. So I think that was probably foolish to believe in the first place. But the great thing about this region was we had local partners who were willing to step up right away and say, okay, if the state's not going to put some funding behind this, we think this is a worthwhile effort. We want to try to figure out how to build more of an ecosystem of entrepreneurship and economic growth around the 2 national labs in Livermore, serving the population across the region. And so they jumped in. And so today we get financial support. Our largest financial sponsor is the city of Livermore. And then the cities of Pleasanton, Dublin, Town of Danville, and the 2 labs provide some funding. And we have historically had recurring revenue that comes in through our facility offerings. So we rent space out to companies. I think we're going to continue to do that to a certain extent, but a pivot that we're going through organizationally right now is the recognition that we really, as a government-funded nonprofit organization, want to focus on lowering barriers to entry for these companies, and primarily for first-time founders and founders who don't come from independent wealth. Right? If you've already exited 2 companies and you have independent wealth, and you don't need to be subsidized by us in your as you get going up with your company. So I think our goal, to your point, Steve, is can we figure out how to create some financial upside for the organization through an equity stake in companies? Maybe is the short answer to that question. It's challenging for nonprofits to do that, but there's some model for that. But I think either way, we want to figure out how to leverage the sponsorship dollars coming in from our funders to provide a real estate option and a facilities option for these life science and hard tech companies, where we can bring the best of breed companies in and have them be able to get started with us without having to come out of pocket right away. I mean, some of our biggest successes when you look back through our organization, companies like AI over in Dublin, Safe Traces in Pleasanton, Buzzkill Labs, which is a current company of ours, they've all needed some no cost or very low cost space to be able to get up and running. In some cases, they're buying pieces of equipment that are tens of thousands of dollars that are necessary for the research that they're doing. And if they have to be paying us rent at the same time, then it detracts from their ability to invest in the actual company. And because it's the company that produces jobs and wealth and economic growth, and not our organization that does that, we need to figure out how to be as additive to their efforts as we can. So we are looking now at a residency model where we can bring in at least some subset of our overall companies we support on a no cost, deferred cost, or equity basis to be able to help them get started through an application process where they can come in and they can get some runway and be able to meet some technical milestones they need to meet to collect the data that's necessary to raise institutional capital.
Awesome. A quick question, Brandon. How does your organization decide on the criteria of the companies that you help, that you assist? I mean, do they have to meet certain criterias, or do you basically just open your doors to anybody that asks for it?
Well, we've always had more space than we needed, so we haven't had to get overly selective about that, but that is about to change. And that's one of the things that we've been working on really since the end of the summer is, when you use ability to pay as a filtering function, which we have done for a long time, then it biases your selection toward those who have capital, not necessarily those who have the best ideas or for whom you can make the biggest impact. So the way that we're looking at doing it now is we've built a pretty strong network of local domain experts, successful founders, and other seasoned executives here in the region. And I think, as many of you know, one of the great advantages of the Tri-Valley is the experienced managerial talent that's out here, that lives out here. And so we're going to be moving toward more of an application-based process where we're going to select companies on the basis of 3 criteria, which is likelihood of success, facility compatibility with our offering, and then the likelihood that that company will be able to successfully grow here in the region. So we probably won't want to take a lot of pharmaceutical companies, right? Pharmaceutical companies are likely going to cluster around South San Francisco for the foreseeable future. We want companies that can stay here and grow here and create jobs and wealth and economic prosperity.
What is the criteria for exit?
For exit?
Yes.
Yeah. So historically, the criteria for exit has been growth for the companies. Well, we say it's up and out or down and out, but either way out, right? So we've had companies that will raise a Series A or a large seed round, and they'll reach a certain point where we would become uneconomical because we charge on a per head count basis. And so it would become more affordable for them to go and get their own space as their head count grew, or they just started crowding out the physical environment that we would give to them. We generally don't give more than 500 square feet to a company. So if you're packing that with 8 people, that gets a little uncomfortable. But it's not been a hard and fast rule of when companies have to go. So, but we have had some uncomfortable conversations with companies that we might refer to as the Walking Dead, who were clearly just sort of hanging out and not making a lot of progress.
Hi, Brandon. I have a question. This is Julio. The bioscience area, obviously we can all see whether or not the stock market or news that is increasingly very active in terms of innovation initiatives. And it costs money for any of these companies to invest, to get into it, and then eventually to be successful. But it's also expensive to find that there was somebody else somewhere in another state, maybe even another country, they're working on the same thing, and eventually some of them have to drop out because they cannot be duplicated. So what is the way to, in fact, what is the chance of any of these new initiatives to be eventually dropped because someone else somewhere else has been working on it?
When you say new initiatives, you mean companies that are developing technologies?
Well, technology or even a product.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens most of the time, I guess there are 2 different ways of looking at this. One is that if you are working on a technology that someone else is already working on, then obviously you have to start with understanding what the IP portfolio of your company is and whether it's defensible compared to what someone else is working on. And that can be really costly. So having, IP strategy and others, you can do some cursory searching on your own to get, but yeah, that is an important part of if you were working with technologists who are coming out of either enterprise labs or university labs or national security labs, generally they have resources to help them understand what the IP positioning is. From a point, that's capitalism, I suppose, right? Everybody is working on these things, and markets are incredibly inventive. And sometimes the solution that you think you're going to market with doesn't end up being the solution that the market actually wants. And so you could have 2 similar platform technologies going after a similar market. And if you realize that what you're working on is inferior to what a competitor is bringing to market, then you either have to pivot or give it up entirely and go work on something else. But I think part of the goal here is to have as many different people trying as many different solutions and commercialization tactics as possible, and realizing that the best will win and that the others will take their skill and experiences from that process and go and try again.
Thank you.
Brandon, this is Marjorie, and I was wondering what has been the success ratio for iGate as far as companies coming out of it, and what are the biggest issues for those that are unable to really continue to thrive or to thrive?
Yeah, I would say, I guess we're probably on par with startups in general, I guess. I mean, I think it's a little bit tough because of the different iterations that we've had as an organization over time. For example, you wouldn't want to measure the success of a spin out company from a co-working space, because that's not what a co-working space does, right? A co-working space supports individuals. So, I don't know if I guess that's probably maybe 2 in 10 or so that have really gone on. And then sometimes they go and they raise, like POC Medical Systems, for example, is a company in Livermore that had tremendous early success, raised a $21 million Series A coming out of our incubator. And then we don't really interact with those companies anymore once they leave the space. And, they were gone within 2 years, just defunct. So, yeah, it depends on what you mean by success, I guess. Our biggest success, as I mentioned, is AI over in Dublin. They started with us as just a 2-person co-founding team. They've raised, I think, about $75 million now and occupy that large building over there with TriNet in Dublin. Safe Trace is another, raised about $14 million there in Pleasanton and Hacienda Business Park, I believe. So, it's most of the successes, interestingly, have been in this really highly defensible intellectual property, science and engineering based companies. And the barriers, probably mostly the well-known barriers, which is you have to have the right team, the right technology, and a viable market to make it work. And then you need a lot of timing and luck. And if any of those things doesn't come through, then you're probably not going to make it. And that's been the case. I think a lot of the companies would probably say that a lack of capital was a big challenge for them. I would disagree. I think that actually the Tri-Valley has really unique access to capital in terms of comparing it to the rest of the country. And I've never seen a really great idea not be able to raise funding here. I think it's more a failure of one of those other elements of team, tech, market, and timing.
Brian, Pete McDonald, we have a kind of a Tri-Valley hedge fund or something where they invest in these kind of companies.
Yeah.
Do you work with that group, and have
We do.
any of your people, wound up being funded through that group?
Yeah, so Greg Hitchin, who is the founding principal of Tri-Valley Ventures along with Don Garman, Greg actually, before Tri-Valley Ventures, wrote the first 3 checks to companies coming out of our incubator. So he really got involved, and he's been an unbelievable resource for this region and for me personally and this organization. So they've done a fantastic job. And one of the reasons that they'll say that they formed was not necessarily just to create more access to capital for Tri-Valley companies, but to keep the wealth that gets built as a result of the success of those companies here in the region, instead of having all of that, what they call carry in the venture world, all of the upside from these exits, these IPOs and acquisitions going to limited partners, around Sand Hill Road. The limited partners for Tri-Valley Ventures are all your neighbors. And so I think that it's a fantastic asset for us. And I hope to see them continue to raise capital and invest capital. And they're a great resource for all of us.
Good.
In fact, Mirador Capital Partners, which is one of the founding organizations of Tri-Valley Ventures, has also been doing a great amount of research and diligence on the Tri-Valley bioeconomy in general. If you go to trivalleybio.org, Lauren Moon, who's a executive vice president over there, she does a state of the Tri-Valley bioeconomy report for our annual summit. And you can get that report from Tri-Valley Bio, along with Brian Wilson from Cushman Wakefield, puts together a real estate report for the life sciences. And that's all available in our bioeconomy section on Tri-Valley Bio.
Great.
Do you have, Brandon, do you guys have a connection with the ROP program?
I know those folks a little bit, but not directly. We don't have a partnership or any kind of active engagement with them. I think it's something we'd like to build to. Same with Las Positas College. I'm an alum of Las Positas College. I got my AA from LASPO. So I grew up in Livermore. I've lived 35 of my 37 years in Livermore and spent a lot of time in the Tri-Valley. So I'm a lifer here, and so I'd like to see more integration with educational programs. To be frank, we're a bootstrapped organization. There are 2 of us who run all of our initiatives. So there has to be a really strong synergy and mission overlap for us to pursue programs and partnerships, because we just don't have the capacity to do a lot of different things and do them well. But I do think there's the talent pool, especially at the high school level within the Tri-Valley, is unbelievable. I mean, it's better than what you see in college age kids in other parts of the country. So we've had some onesie twosie engagements with really proactive students who want to come in and work alongside startup companies. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value to students working startups instead of working in larger corporations. Of the kids that we've had who've come through and worked with some of our companies, one of the things we hear is that, if they had gone to work at, Raytheon or, Thermo Fisher or another large company that has a highly structured internship program, they would probably work on some project that never saw the light of day. And it would be more of an academic exercise. When you are a student and you work inside of a startup company, you're working on something that matters because everything matters.
Yeah.
And you're working alongside the CEO, the CTO of that company, seeing how business decisions get made. And I think that proximity is really important in trying to help encourage more younger people to start companies. So I'd love to figure out how to make that work. We just, want to make sure that when we commit to something like that, we can do it really well.
Yeah, I can almost imagine that some of the startups that you are working with, if they themselves will have a very defined program that a high school student could handle, then that might be something.
Yeah, when they get to later stages, I think that's right. At the point where they're working with us, they're hanging on for dear life and trying to find funding and make technical breakthroughs. And it's, everybody on the team has to be pulling their weight. And that can be challenging to try to ramp up from an internship or project standpoint, because most of these startups are, 6 weeks away from death. So it's that can be a little bit challenging. Yeah. But that being said, I think between the stage at which we work with companies, which is very early, and then those much larger companies, there are a huge number of companies in the region and a growing number where I think some combination of ROP and community college involvement and work-based, project-based learning really could be, there could be something built that'd be very meaningful around that, especially for these companies as they're moving through growth stages. But connecting them with talent, especially hands-on talent, technician level talent, is really important.
Yeah.
Do you find that you find two companies that have synergistic technologies and you can create a way to merge them?
Less that than we find that by having this community orientation where the companies are working side by side without much concern for privacy leads to synergistic skill sets amongst the people who are involved. So for example, one of our companies right now so a resident company has a piece of equipment and the founder of that company has a technical background and training that turned out was extremely useful to another company that we were trying to recruit into to our space and into the region. And just having that piece of equipment and the ability to consult a little bit to that company is probably going to be the thing that lands the second company here in the region. So when you can bring people in, I mean, as I say, I've been pleasantly surprised far more often than I've been right about who needs to know whom and who can help each other. So in some ways, we just need to create collision spaces for these entrepreneurs and technical people to meet each other because there is so much overlap. If you're working in diagnostic devices, for allergies, there's a lot of overlap between that and working in diagnostic devices for cancer, whether it's on the hardware side or the software side for that matter. So there's a great benefit to clustering. And we see that in other parts of the Bay Area, like Emeryville, which is arguably the hottest place in the Bay Area for life science technologies today. The companies really want to be around other companies to expedite the learning process.
Hello, Brandon. It's Steve Van Dorn at the Chamber here in Pleasanton. Good to see you.
Steve, you too.
Happy New Year. Have you been able to acquire any funding from some of the relief funds that have been offered by the federal government and state to help you attract some more companies here?
No, we haven't really. Nonprofits were uniquely excluded from some of the initial funds. I also really wasn't This is a little bit inside baseball, but I wasn't particularly interested in taking on debt, and I wasn't clear on how that was going to play out. So what we focused on instead really was just cutting our burn rate. So by closing down our co-working operation and adjusting our real estate, we've cut our burn rate by about $20,000 a month, which has put us in a great position to be able to make some intentional choices about where we go from here. So we've been focused mostly on that, continuing to work with our companies in the portion of the real estate that's dedicated to the life sciences, and then getting really active and looking for our next move.
Thank you.
A bunch of our companies did, though. We had tens of thousands of dollars funnel into some of our early stage companies. Some getting as much as $40,000 or $50,000 of PPP and some of the other funding sources, which has been great because then they could continue to pay their rent, which helped us a lot.
Nancy, you're muted now.
Question?
All right. Oh.
Nancy, we can't hear you.
Yeah, you're still muted, Nancy.
Nancy, hold your space bar down and talk.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I need lessons. I need lessons. I want to know how you work with the laboratory. You know, that's such a big organization, government funded opportunities. You know, for what does that look like?
Yeah, that's been the principal objective of ours from the beginning, was really to try to leverage the labs here in the community there. It's incredibly unique for us as a region to have two national laboratories, with Sandia's California presence here as well. It is challenging. The laboratories have a national security mission, which is by far the most important thing that they do and the largest focus of the organization. So from our standpoint, we work with the Innovation and Partnerships Office at Lawrence Livermore, and we work with the Economic Development Office at Sandia. And our goal is really to try to do two things. We want to help make connections for the national labs with the existing economic community outside of them, because they're very interested in something that they call spin in, which is like spin out, but the opposite, where they want to be able to adopt technological approaches that are happening outside of their labs as the labs have become much more collaborative and open over the last decade or so, including the Livermore Valley Open Campus, which some of you may have heard of, which is actually a carve out of federal land where they're allowed to bring in outside organizations to co-locate with them. So the Advanced Manufacturing Lab on the Lawrence Livermore side, the Cybersecurity Technology Research Lab on the Sandia side. So we want to help be a conduit for interacting with startups developing novel technologies that the labs might be able to use for national security applications. And then of course, for technologists who want to leave the lab, we want to be a resource for them. There's definitely seemingly more of a push amongst the younger generation to perhaps not view the labs as lifetime employment, and instead say, I'm going to come and I'm going to work on national security for a little while. I'm going to get to work with some world-class scientific equipment here and scientific minds, but I'm also in the Bay Area and I want to be part of the startup scene. And so right now we have two companies that are laboratory spin-out companies, one working on a rocket-powered drone technology for takeoff and landing, the other working on a new class of materials that are metallic. It's a gold gel essentially that has some antibacterial properties. So we want to collect those folks who know they want to leave and help them spin out, and then hopefully help to connect them to a network and some resources here and keep them here. So preventing brain drain of younger folks who are leaving the lab, make sure that we can keep them here in the region.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. We have 5 minutes now.
Great, thank you.
That was excellent. Steve?
Brandon, I have a question.
Oh.
Brandon, how many
Yes.
companies do you have in your space now?
Right now we have just under 10. I think it's 9 full-time, I think, in the space.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we could wrap this up, we have the board announcing a few things. Steve?
Good afternoon, everybody. Just a reminder, it's the third Thursday of the month, so we've got a Thirsty Thursday at 5 o'clock this evening. I sent out the Zoom invite a couple days ago. I put it in the chat, so hopefully you can join us. We're going to celebrate an early Super Bowl party. So wear your favorite jersey, and we know exactly what Ricky's going to be wearing. So I know he won't be surprising us in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully you can join us. Thanks.
Hey, Brandon,
I wanted
Brandon,
to say, Steve, Steve, you can't copy those Zoom links. So the one that for the poetry, can you send that in an email to me? And Steve Van Dorn, we can't copy your Zoom link for Third Thirsty Thursday off of these chat things.
You can right click and paste it, but okay, and copy and paste, but that's okay. I'll send it out again. Okay.
You'll be able to open it, and then once you've opened it, then you can click on it to copy and paste it.
Right.
hey, Brandon, thanks for coming out today, man. We appreciate you and iGate and all that you bring to the Valley and the value that you bring in helping all these companies. We appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here
I
today.
appreciate you all having me very much, and have a great rest of your year. Appreciate it.
Thank you. If you need something, let us know.
If any of you need any technical advice, don't forget me.
Okay, I just figured out how to do the thing that you sent, Steve.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
I had to mute you earlier because your background noise, Mr. Technology.
Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. Good to have you.
Where can we find light in this
Take care.
never-ending shade? The laughs carry a sea we must.
Whose TV is that?
That's Nancy.
That was Nancy getting a technical lesson. And foundation board members, don't forget we're using the same Zoom link for the foundation meeting at 2.
Okay.
Any other announcements from the board before we?
Is that 2 today?
Any other announcements from the board?
Yes, 2 o'clock, Bill.
So you guys probably saw in the chat, the Super Bowl pool is now sold out, so I won't have to talk about that anymore. A couple of really quick updates on, we're putting together the committees and the chairs for next year. And Steve Van Dorn is our newest victim. Our newest person to donate his time, and he will be the chair of International Services. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
Thanks
great.
for stepping up, Steve.
Steve Baker is moving over to community service. So thank you, Steve, another Steve. So for those of you that I haven't talked to, I'll be giving you a call pretty soon.
Good job, Bill. Thanks. Anything else from our board member? Okay, with that, great meeting, everyone. Good to see you.
Good
See you next
meeting.
week. Good meeting.
Thanks, Ginger.
Meeting adjourned.